Alright, hey everybody, this is Scott Sheetrock Service in Houston, doing a Southern style. So they got this video I just saw online. I didn't even watch the whole thing because I disagree with the title for a Vancouver carpenter that says reasons why he doesn't do a repair and paint at the same time. Which, as a drywall guy living in Houston, it's almost 45-minute ride with my truck and trailer and toll roads to get here. So if I can do this repair and paint it in one setting, saves the customer money, saves me money. So as you see, we got a water leak here. The water leak's been corrected. We do have some water stains. Now we're gonna cut this out here to here. There's a stud here. We'll put a piece of wood here, and then we're gonna cut this out, but everything outside of that line, you can see here, there's a little bit of a water stain here. No separation. Everything's hard. So when drywall gets wet once or twice, it's not necessarily ruined. So what we do is an oil-based kill. So this is the Sherwin-Williams Pro Block. Works really well. In air conditioned, 20 minutes or so, it's dry to the touch. So we'll spray this first. Anything outside my lines, I'm gonna spray. I'm not gonna worry about inside here because we're gonna cut that out. And obviously you want everything covered up well. It's an oil-based primer. That'll take care of that stain, and that'll dry. Cut this out, we'll hang it, and we'll come back to the finished side, and I'll show you how I dry it and how easy it is to do so. We'll be right back. All right, so we're back. So a couple quick things. You can see we hung the patch, obviously. We got lucky, we found a stud here, so I use nails on the small stuff. So we just nailed 3 on each side. Then I'm gonna put 1 on the outside to tighten up the old rock. And then I'll put, 1 and 2 here as well to tighten that up. So I'll put the recessed edge towards here. This is going out here, so I'm gonna put a recessed edge, which makes this a low spot, but that keeps me from having to bust mud out here. So I did that on purpose. I'm gonna show you a quick trick on how to double tape, because this is a pretty hefty gap right here. This was probably full skimmed at some point, so the mud's a little thick. So I call it double tape. So I'm gonna fill this gap in here completely. We're just filling that in nice and even. And then I'm using my trusty fiber fuse for flats, for patches, the best thing. So I'm just gonna put that tape right at that edge. I'm not covering the joint. I'm just touching the edge there. And I'm not gonna wipe that just yet. So I'm gonna mud back over the actual joint. So I'm on the edge, that's the actual joint itself. So I'll put another mud there. And then I'm gonna go center on the joint, like so. So with fiber tape, if you wipe sprayed, especially if you've got a gap like this, if you just go center, it'll kind of crinkle up. So I'll feather edge, I'll show you on my other videos. Start in the middle. And I'm not putting a lot of pressure towards the joint, just wiping that outside. So I'll keep that mud that I have on my knife. I'll do the same thing on the other side, but real lightly. You don't want to do it, you don't want to lay it down. What's this technique is doing is basically building that joint up with tape and not a whole lot of mud. So we'll get our other joint in, mud all of them. I call it a 1/2 of 6. Just enough for that tape. Go all the way to the joint there. Wipe that, and then just add a little bit of mud on those corners. Put those pieces in. So this is plaster of Paris. I got another video on how to mix the plaster of Paris. This will be hard to the touch, about 5 minutes, sometimes less, depending on how you mix it or how thick you mix it for the get-go. So we had a little bit of a push in here. You can see that indentation. So I'll just put another little piece of tape right over that. And get everything nice and level before you float. Your float is a lot easier to do. All right, so now we've got all our tape nice and flat. And we're just gonna fill it in. I like to apply with the 6. I'll wind up wiping with the 12, but it's easier just to put the mud exactly where I want it and how I want it with the 6. So I'm nice and full here all the way around. So I'll feather edge all the way around like so. And I'm gonna pull out this bad boy 12. Put a little more mud in this middle here. Nice and full. So I'm gonna start. I'm not gonna put any pressure on this side of the knife, the outside. Everything's gonna be on the inside. Kind of feather edge that. So if you got little gaps or holes like that, just fill it back in so you can get nice and full on your float coat. So now we got it nice and full. We don't have a bunch of lap marks or holes. And then same thing with feather edge. Put all my pressure on that outside and just roll that edge. And so I left this kind of thick. If you've seen any of my other videos with the plaster, I'm gonna be able to rake that down when it sets up. So I left all my lap marks inside. And so I'll be able to mold this, so to speak. There's a little piece of cracked corner bead right here. So I figured I'd give them a little lagniappe. I'm from Louisiana. Lagniappe is a French word. It means a little something extra. And if I don't put this mud on the wall, I'm throwing it away. So might as well help them out here. So I'll pull a little piece of that fiber tape on it. I do have another video how to fix cracked corner bead. And that fiber tape is beautiful. That's metal corner bead, so it tends to crack on a regular basis. But it will never crack again, I promise you. Just put a little bit of mud on here. And stay out of this patch. Feather edge. And there it is. So we'll let this set up, come back, and I'll see y'all in just a minute. Alright, so we're back. We got everything plastered as you guys saw right now. This is about 7 minutes later and it's rock hard. So when it gets too hard, I'll try to damp it a little bit with sponge to help me rake. So that's what I'm gonna do. Just high side of the knife and just keep moving it. And then everything you take off your knife, you're gonna fill in pit holes or anything like that. It's a molding agent. That's why I like plaster. Hot mud is good for bigger patches, but it's a little more porous. Not as smooth as plaster of Paris is, so I prefer plaster. But again, bigger jobs, I'm going to use hot mud so I can mix, more than one pan. Basically a smooth finish, but it's got a very, very light roll-on texture. So normally, if for a smooth finish for sure, I would put a little tight skim on this prior to texturing. But because we're doing a roll-on, which basically covers the entire patch, it's essentially going to be a skim coat as well. I'm filling everything in real nice, get rid of my lap marks, any pit holes that I see. It's going to be very close to perfect upon completion of this process. And then obviously we have to put some texture. I'm just filling everything in, little lap mark. Line there. And so right now we've basically got it perfect. So all I'm going to do is take that sponge and sponge this edge. I do that in all my videos. Kind of helps knock that edge down where it's not so prolific through your texture and obviously through the paint. So all my edges are sponged. Everything's nice and flat and even. And so now we're just going to add a little bit of texture. Texture, if you look real close, it's really, really light. So the lighter it is, the looser you want your mud. Obviously heavier, you would go with a little bit heavier mud. I did wet the roller first, so it's fairly damp. So I'm just going to put a nice even coat on here. So you just want to put it all nice and even. Put a little more mud, make sure we get enough on here. So as you can see, I'm pretty much covering the entire thing, so that's why I didn't skim it. It's not necessary on a roll-on. So you want to get it nice and even. And so you got to look and see which direction the texture is going, and that's going to be your final out. So it looks to me like it was kind of rolled out. So that last stroke, get it even, is just one stroke out. So I don't have a whole lot of pressure on here. And actually just the bristles are touching really. And that's what gives you that impression, that final impression. It's all going the same direction. So depending on your pressure will depend on how big it lays down or how slow it lays down. And then do that feather roll, which I do in my other paint video, on the ends so you don't leave an edge. All right, so there we are, we're textured. My trusty cameraman slash helper is going to show you how we start. I'm going to yank this plastic first. So we're going to get a heat gun. Heat gun's down here. This is a Wagner, which I actually bought on accident, but I really like. It's got a cool down fan on it. So after you use it, because it burns at about 1,000 degrees, so you got to be careful with it. But we'll pull this plastic down before we start heating, so we don't melt the plastic. So I always pull down when I'm doing this. So it's a little wet, so it shouldn't crumble right now. But as you can see, we got a nice clean edge. Going real slow with that. So there it is in a nutshell. So now it's a matter of drying. So it does take a little while. We're not going to bore you with drying the whole thing, but we'll show you how to get started. So we usually start on the edges, and essentially you're going to get everything white. It does take a little time. But again, it's 45 minutes for me to get to this job. So we'll set it on high and just go slow. You got to keep moving. You don't want to stay on it. And again, this is a bit of a process, but it's an hour and a half round trip here. And it'll take us probably about 30 minutes to get it dry enough to paint. And we'll cut back here in a little bit when he's done. All right, so we're back. It's been roughly 20-25 minutes tops. We put the heat gun on it, and you gotta kind of take that heat gun off of it and let it dry, air dry, and sometimes you'll see some dark spots come, but as you can see, everything's mud color, so it's dry. So this is the owner's paint. What I like to do when we do you know, a match, or if we're doing something, if they don't have the paint, I'll cut a small piece out somewhere near my repair and then get that matched at Sherwin-Williams 200 flat. They'll, you know, bring a piece. You need about a 50-cent piece or so, big, 2 by 2 inches wise, and they'll actually take a picture of that, and then they'll paint a little splotch on there, dry it with a heat gun, and then show you. And then if it needs to be darker or lighter, you can see it before you even bring it back. So anyway, so this is the homeowner's paint. He said it matches. We're about to find out. So everything's dry. We've been here a total of 1 hour and 45 minutes, and that's coming in, covering up, oil-based priming our spot over here, cutting it out, hanging it, finishing it, and drying it, and now it's ready for paint. As I said, 1.5 hours, 2 ways, round trip for me to get here. So it just makes sense as a professional for me to get it done in one setting. So we got crown here. Always tell people you can use blue tape, but I try to act like it's not there. So when I do my cut in, I'll try to stay off of it as it's not even there. So that just helps with any kind of bleeding. If it does bleed through, you're better off not being all over it, so to speak. It does work well, and a lot of times you can actually take a wet rag over your tape after it's stuck, and that actually helps it stick a little better. Not super wet, just damp. But obviously we're cutting in here. You can't get in here with a roller. So we'll do all our edges with this brush. And when we get to the roller, I'm going to use the same roller that I used for texture. It's a 1/2 inch. It's a blue and white Purdy. I like it. Lays down real nice. You can use it for smooth surfaces or dark or heavy textures as well. You get a good coat on here. And remember, we had this prime spot here, so I'm gonna go a little further just to make sure I get it in there too, because you got to paint over that primer. And I'll probably just fill this whole corner in. Hopefully it's got a good match, and then we'll feather roll, which I have another video on how not to paint the whole ceiling. Which, if you have the right color, is not necessary. Alright, so we got a good cut in all the way around. A little bit more right here. And then we'll get on this roller. So this is a flat paint. You don't have to prime per se or use a primer. A flat essentially is a primer. So in this case, that's all we're gonna do is 2 coats. I don't have a whole lot of paint here, so hopefully I got enough. But we'll put it on nice and even all the way down. Get a little bit more on here. So again, I have another video, but what I'm about to show you is called feather roll. So we've got all this cut in. So I'm going to go the same direction that I was putting that texture and get to that end and pick up that roller. We call it feather roll. It's a dry roll. If you just stop the roller, you got a better chance of leaving a line paint-wise. So if you do that feather roll like this, you have a much better chance of the paint blending. A little better. And there it is. So again, hour, 45 minutes, we're here. This is still wet. When it dries, it'll be a little bit nicer. And we're actually gonna put another coat the same way, probably about 10 to 15 minutes. It dries pretty quick, your first coat, and then we'll put another coat and we'll be done. So again, Southern Style here in Houston. This is why we do it as a professional. It makes sense to do it. If it's your own home, obviously you can get your repair, take your time, get it right, paint it the next day. But if you're in a rush or if you're in a service and you're able to get this done, especially for a long ride, it just makes sense. So again, Southern Style here in Katy, Texas. Please subscribe. If you have any comments, please send them to me. Anything in particular you want to see me do, let me know. As always, Southern Style.